We're out looking for snakes again. No luck yet, but we are heading to a turtle pond. Something that's called a turtle pond, so crossing fingers. I'm nominated for 3 Ennie Awards. What? It's actually not just me. It is 3 different projects I worked on with like a team of people. Pretty diverse people in all projects. The first one is Six of Swords, which is a selection of scenarios for Blue Rose, the role-playing game Blue Rose. I wrote a romantic gothic vampire setting, which is ridiculous and amazing. It was a lot of fun to write. Also, feminism, #feminism is up. That is an anthology of short feminist games written by people, mostly women, all over the world. So they deal with issues like the gender politics of self-use, which is what I wrote. There's one game called So Mom, I Made a Sex Tape, and like what it means to talk about sex with your family. And there's a game about like abortion rights in Ireland. So they really vary. It's an amazing anthology. It's been in museums. It's won awards. It's great. So check that out for sure. And the third thing is Gnome Stew, which I'm a newer member of. It's a blog. And it is really interesting because it has a really mixed audience, I would say. You know, from very traditional to very avant-garde role-playing games and gamers. And a lot of the writers are very diverse on there. So that is a project I am super happy to be a part of as well. I wrote a great blog post about a Monster Hearts game I was running. I can't even remember all the details of the blog post other than it was super cool and I loved it. So yeah, those are the things that I'm a part of that are nominated for Ennies. Here's the weird thing about nominating games for awards is that like most game books or projects, especially like the ones that I was a part of, are not like a single person endeavor. They are a team of people, you know, ranging in number depending on how big the project is and how much money it has, right? That make those games happen. And so, you know, there might be one name attached to it, kind of like a director of a movie that kind of stands out as the person who is like the face of the game, but there's always like a billion people behind that. So I just wanted to point that out. You know, most of these games are a group endeavor. Many of them, I was surprised, have pretty diverse groups as far as like gender, race, I'm not sure about ability, stuff like that. So yeah, I was kind of surprised. A lot of times the Ennies are just like, here's D&D and maybe a few indie games and that's it. And there was a lot more indie representation this year, so yay, baby steps. So I thought it might be interesting to compare one industry award thing to another. And I was looking, well, I guess I just thought the Oscars was a good example because this year the Oscars were kind of interesting. And you know, when you look at these award ceremonies, you always have to remember that this is like kind of an insider thing. It's not very accessible to many people and creators in lots of ways. It is not inclusive. You know, it's not designed to be that way. It's a popularity contest. And in a lot of ways, that's bad. Because it doesn't tell you much about the design of a thing. It just tells you about the popularity of a thing, right? So, yeah. So I looked up the Oscars. This year, the Oscar nominees in 2018 for Best Picture were The Shape of Water, Phantom Thread, The Post, Darkest Hour, 3 Billboards, Call Me by Your Name, Dunkirk, Get Out, and Lady Bird. That is a diverse set of movies. Like, the things that those movies are about, you know, there's a lot of racial diversity, there's gender diversity, there is narrative diversity, and that some of them are, I think there's only one war movie on there, and almost all the rest of them focus on social issues and identity, which is pretty interesting to me as like the standout movies of 2018. Like, what are the stories that are being told in our collective consciousness right now in 2018, right? And why are these the focus of those? Okay, let's compare that to the best games at the Ennies this year in 2018. We have Delta Green, Blades in the Dark, Zweihander, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, sorry, Red Markets, a game of economic horror, and Vert, the tabletop role-playing game. So, in contrast, when we look at what these games are about, the narratives, what they focus on, Delta Green is, you know, militaristic Cthulhu sci-fi. Blades in the Dark is about playing criminals and, you know, violent, grim folks. Zweihander is the same. It's kind of violent fantasy. Red Markets is a zombie game. And Vert is kind of like a dark cyberpunk reality hopping game as far as I could tell. I hadn't heard of 3 of these, which is kind of cool. Like, they are maybe not on the popularity contest thing. It seems like some of them might even be from other countries, which is interesting. Global role-playing games is something I'm super interested in, like what's happening in other countries that I don't know about. So when you look at these role-playing games, the focus of most of them, it seems like, anyway, I'm not too familiar with the last 3, right? But I do know the first 2 pretty well, is violence and grim, dark stuff. Like, it is across the board about darkness, pretty dark shit, which, I don't know, does not seem to have much political or social relevance. Yeah, I mean, you could make the argument that, oh, things are dark in America right now, so, you know, darkness is coming out of that. But in a lot of ways, these look like a lot of very typical role-playing games. These, you know, grim darkness has been super popular in role-playing games forever. You know, doing violence to people is a typical thing that you do in role-playing games. Like, none of these are kind of breaking any of those rules. Of like of role-playing game genres in general. They don't have the same narratives that they don't have any similar narratives with any of the movies that I mentioned. They're not about social issues. They're not about gender, race, or identity. That type of stuff. So yeah, that just got me thinking about dominant cultural narratives, you know, like The Shape of Water won the Best Picture award this year. It's a queer monster movie directed by, you know, a Mexican immigrant. I believe Del Toro is Mexican. Correct me if I'm wrong. And it's a horror movie. But it's like an optimistic horror movie and a love story. It's really, really different and unique inside of its genre in horror movies. And for a horror movie to win an Oscar is a huge deal. Like, all of those things are really interesting, right? So, you know, in comparison, any of the best games, and don't get me wrong, these aren't bad games. Like, I think Blades in the Dark is good and Delta Green is good. I don't know the other ones too well. But they're not doing anything unique. They're telling pretty much the same dominant story that you hear in role-playing games. So that's interesting, the comparison between movies and role-playing games as media. Like, why are movies doing this progressive stuff according to the Oscars anyway? They highlighted really progressive movies. And why are the Ennies highlighting kind of just normal role-playing game stuff? Why weren't they looking at progressive, interesting, weird things? Could have been that they weren't submitted. It could have been that, you know, the judges didn't have enough time because they are overwhelmed by hundreds of games, I guess. It could be that's just not to the judge's taste. It could be they're not thinking about progressive issues. Who knows? Like, I actually don't know too much about the inner workings of the Ennies. I just know that it's a popularity contest in a lot of ways. So yeah, interesting comparison. I actually attended the Ennies a billion years ago when I still could afford to go to Gen Con. It's just like too expensive now. And I attended because Gaming as Women, the blog I used to write for when we were active, was nominated for an Ennie in the blog category. We didn't win the gold, we won the silver. I accepted it. I gave a really awkward speech. But there was a lot of excitement. I think that a lot of people were happy that you know, something that was led by a minority won an award, even if it wasn't the gold award. And I was excited about it too. I thought, you know, things were moving in that direction. But, you know, looking at this list, there's tons of women on these projects. But the ones that really stand out as lady-coded are maybe the ones that I'm a part of, right? Like maybe two of them. Like maybe, you know, hashtag feminism and Six of Swords. I think Blue Rose is a pretty lady and queer-coded game. But a lot of the rest of them are still kind of like typical fare, you know? So yeah, I don't know, baby steps, I guess. I don't know where role-playing games stand in comparison with other media or why we're doing what we're doing. A lot of it's probably just due to the community and, you know, money and other things, but interesting, just interesting observations. I forgot to mention the other lady-led project, Bluebeard's Bride. Definitely an important game, for sure, as far as women in horror. It's cool. Congratulations to all the Ennie nominees. I hope that we all win in some way. And it's great to just kind of be there with all of you, and let's keep doing the hard work. Let's keep doing those baby steps and pushing things forward. So yeah, that's my video. It's for the day. I don't know if you can see it, but Soul is right back here, being his adorable self, sitting in his hammock. He's a hammock boy. And yeah, thanks for watching. Please like, share. Let me know what you think about the Ennie nominations in the comments below. Do you think I missed something in my analysis and the comparison between the Oscars and the Ennies? Let me know. And I will see you next vid.